I'm here today with Chris Madrid with Guaranteed Rate, here to do our market of the moment for the week of August 9th, 2021. Like I mentioned last week, we're just trying to stay on top of the market. We know a shift is going to happen. These rising housing costs and things aren't going to last forever. So we kind of want to stay on top of it, help keep our clients on top of when that shift actually happens, because shifts in real estate generally happen overnight. Chris has been in this longer than me, so I would assume you would attest to that, Chris.
Yes, yeah, it's very difficult to and it's almost difficult to predict, right? Like we can all say yes, it's coming, but is that gonna be tomorrow or is that in 2 years or 5 years, right?
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's the I think that's the most important thing about real estate and lending and anything really tied and stuff that's touching real estate is if you're not getting information like that day for that week, um it's a moot point, right? It's all out, it's outdated by that point. So if it's not like obviously what we're doing here on a weekly basis, it's old news.
yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, you doing good today? See you.
Man, doing great. Doing
Both of
great.
our
Yeah, I got a little haircut this morning, so I didn't do gel and
my haircut's coming
everything else.
tomorrow.
There you
That's
go.
at today.
Yeah,
So,
man. Yeah,
but
for sure.
got my roads behind me, so I'm happy.
Yeah, it's a good
Like
look.
that. It's not guaranteed rate posted, but you know. All right. Well, we're going to get into Chris's mortgage info and find out what rates are doing today and trends and those type of things. So, Chris, could you just start off with, what current mortgage rates? I know you're looking up right as we were getting ready to go on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing as of today, right? As of essentially this week, right? The week of the ninth, we saw interest rates go up essentially about 1/4%. So it's one of those things where you hear stuff in the news, all these things. Like here's the crazy thing is next week, ABC and NBC, they're gonna be talking about mortgage rates going up, and it happened this week, right? That's how it goes every time. And that's essentially what happened. Last week is rates had gone up the week before, and then of course you start getting the phone calls the following week. Hey, I heard interest rates dropped. I'm like, well, they dropped last week, right? And it's always that fun little dance that we have to do. But yeah, essentially we're I think from a market standpoint, most companies are going to be probably low threes right now on a 30-year fixed, right? So essentially, in the low threes. Some more competitive mortgage companies, guaranteed rate obviously is kind of cutting edge on being super competitive in the market. We're sitting at high twos essentially, so 2.9, something like that. Again, up from last week where we were 2.6, 2.7.
Huh?
So and again, that happened like late Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and then they've been kind of, rates have been relatively flat. Part of that, I'd imagine is tied to the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that just came out, right? So essentially, we've had the Fed keeping rates artificially low, right? They're buying mortgage-backed securities, which helps keep mortgage rates low. Well, when they have to dedicate or allocate funds, right, to these other things, they're not buying as much. So it's one of those things where we essentially saw it coming. You just don't know, like the tough part is knowing by how much, right? Is it going to go? Are you going up 0.1? Are you going up 0.2? Are you going up 0.5? So those are the things that you need to, like, if you're in the process of purchasing a home, you have to be on your guy. And essentially, clients that I have that are in the process of building and they're not closing in 30 days, right? They're closing in, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Those are conversations that we're having of, hey, maybe we look at watching for the next 30 days and then we do a long-term lock or we do something like that to prevent any further increases. So those are all conversations that need to be had in the moment, right? I mean, those are things that you have to be in contact with somebody, to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information, because it's week by week, man, we're seeing changes.
Yeah. So real quick, let's say a $300,000 mortgage and, we're up 1/4%. What's the difference, short term,
Yeah.
long term on
Yeah, I mean,
those?
it's not the end of the world. I mean, you're looking at here, I can actually do that real quick. So a 1/4% increase in rate is probably $40 a month,
Okay.
right? Which again, at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world, right? So that's not a huge increase. But from an overall interest standpoint, it's interesting how that 1/4% would cost you $15,000 to $20,000 more over the life of the loan. So that $40 a month, right, over a 30-year period is pretty significant. But again, I mean, it's one of those things where I'd like the rates are going to be what they are. As long as you're not like where we start to see a significant impact on qualification, right? So somebody's ability to qualify is if you're going up 1%, right? 1%, you're losing 10% in what you could purchase, right? So if you were, let's just say that we had a customer that was barely qualifying at a $300,000 loan amount at 3%, right? Just as an example, if rates go up to 4%, I mean they're now capped at 270.
Yeah.
So that's where it starts to make a big difference in affordability and what you can qualify for. And again, conversations that we had, you and I had a year ago, is now that interest rates are so low, we've had customers that can actually qualify for more because rates at the time were in the low twos, right?
Yeah.
So those are just those things that we start to kind of see as well. And if you're on the fence about purchasing, right now we're starting to see, or at least a couple of weeks ago, we started to see a lot of buyers, a lot of customers, just basically come off the sidelines and say, hey, I'm not buying right now. So that buyer fatigue that we kind of talked about, when you're submitting 10 to 15 offers and getting beat out on every single one,
Yeah.
and it can be depressing, right? But again, the things too that you have to kind of realize is hey, if your max qualification was XYZ amount this year and rates go up 1% next year, right?
Mhm.
That number just came down. So the homes that you were looking at that were, maybe you didn't like them all that much, maybe they needed to be updated. It's going to be a whole lot worse
Yeah.
next year, right? And again, not to say that rates are going up 1% next year. We'll see little increases. So kind of moving forward into trends, we'll see this kind of happens, right? We're seeing upticks and downticks, right? So nothing. I don't think we're going into the fours or anything like that. Overnight, or at least for the next handful of months. But we'll see, like we just did from last week to this week, we'll see kind of those ups and downs of the market.
Are you still seeing your agent partners getting into multiple offer situations? Is that in certain price points or all price points?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm starting to see it now. It's slowed down a little bit, thankfully. Areas that have not slowed down are the essentially the highly desired areas where you have Frisco schools. Those obviously that's still popping. We've had a handful of customers buying out in Fort Worth, and there's no multiple offers in some cases, right? So it really depends on location. For families that are moving in with kiddos in middle school and high school, that they're wanting to get their students into sports, and they're wanting to get all this stuff in that Frisco ISD. That's where we're still really I mean, Frisco's super competitive, right? I mean,
Yeah.
essentially everything's coming to that, kind of the Frisco area with the PGA opening up and all these things. Everybody wants to live here, and it's not slowing down any, right?
We'll
Um,
see that when we look at, the numbers and stuff too. So
yeah. But yes, I mean, there are other areas that we're starting to see, not as many multiple offers. And then again, ultimately at this point, buyers are they've kind of had it,
yeah.
right? If you have, if there's sellers that are just, being super aggressive, super, for lack of better words, greedy, right? With home prices, buyers are like, you know what, you can let your house sit.
Yeah.
I'm not overpaying essentially for that. So that's kind of what we've started to see a little bit. Again, in the outer areas. Again, that's not in your Frisco's or Prosper or
Yeah.
McKinney's, right? Those main areas, but we're starting to see it kind of in the outer, kind of the outline areas.
Okay. And then, last thing I want to talk about a little bit is, there's a big myth that you have to have 20% down to get into a house and things of that nature. So first I want you to speak a little bit about that and, break that myth. And then I wanted to ask, I got a little follow-up question for you on that.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, it was a common thing, 20 plus years ago, where not as many programs or options were open and available. I mean, really, since it's kind of crazy that this is still a topic of conversation, because it's been, it's probably been over 20 years where you could, FHA was I think one of the first programs that came out where you can do as little as 3.5% being a first time home buyer, and then not even being a first time home buyer. So FHA's opened up where essentially if you've owned a home, or even if you have a current FHA home or FHA loan on a home that you're selling, you can still then do another FHA loan if you go that route, and only have to do 3.5% down. So I mean, we do a ton of FHA loans for first-time home buyers and for non-first-time home buyers, because it can be utilized. A lot of, I think where the information gets jumbled is there are specific down payment and closing cost assistance programs for first-time home buyers that if you're not a first-time home buyer, you can't get, right? So I think that's where a lot of the information, it gets kind of jumbled where, okay, so if I'm not a first-time home buyer, I have to do 20% down. And that's not true. There are special programs for people that have never owned a home before, or they haven't owned in the last 3 years. So that's essentially what would constitute a first-time home buyer. A convention. So Fannie and Freddie rolled out a program, a handful of years ago, where you can do as little as 3% down on conventional, where it used to be minimum of 5%, right? So traditionally, where you would hear of you need to do 20% down on a conventional loan, you can, even as a non-first-time home buyer on conventional, you can still do as little as 5%. You may not be able to do 3% down if you've owned in the last 3 years, but at least you don't have to do 20, right? So there's still, I mean, from a first-time buyer perspective, right? So we're starting to see, college age, guys and gals that are looking to purchase for the very first time. There's still options to not have to come out of pocket with so much. You can still do 3 to 3.5% down for conventional and FHA. And if you have the ability to get outside of the city limits, right? There's still USDA is still a great option in the kind of north, not far north, but north of like 380. So essentially, you're not buying anything in that Prosper area south, right? But north of, you can do 100% financing on USDA as long as you meet the income parameters. Now, again, any of the assistance programs that are out there, you still have to meet the income criteria. Where, like, thankfully right now they're probably on the highest, the upper end that they've been in a long time. So if your household income is essentially under 100,000, you could do 0% down on USDA, and then potentially qualify for some down payment and closing cost assistance on the first time home buyer program. So there's, again, at the end of the day, get with a professional. Don't believe everything that you read online or are told, right? Because it's always that whatever degrees of separation, like, the truth was told 7 times ago, and then it just keeps getting diluted every other person it's told to. So get with the professional, get with, obviously us that we're in this every single day. There was a point in time where guidelines were changing, like it seemed like every day, and thankfully that's no longer the case. So things have kind of been in place, right? So we know a good amount of information that's come out, but that was a challenge in years past, where, hey, guideline was this, and then tomorrow it's something different, right? And that hasn't happened in a little bit. But again, the point, get with a professional. Obviously, your local people are always going to be the better guys and girls that know what's, boots on the ground. They know what's going on right now.
Real estate is local. That is for sure. It can change from neighborhood to neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely changes from school district to school district in our area. And the last thing, kind of a little follow-up question on the 20% down. Are you seeing some people that had saved for a 20% down payment switching to a 3% mortgage and then using that additional money they had to win offers?
So yes, I mean that's the with again, depending on the area that they're wanting to buy in, right? They're essentially utilizing. So again, not everybody's going to qualify for that 3%, right? But at least the 5% down, which would be the typical minimum for conventional. You know, we've seen some that say, hey, I'm going to just do 10% down, and then the other 10% I'll use to, you know, to kind of sweeten up my offer if it's a home that that has been updated recently, right? Within the last couple of years. Man, it's amazing how, you know, fresh paint, some hardware on cabinets. I mean, those things just it just makes a difference to stand out. But homes that are, you know, a little bit more modern, you know, modernized, those are the ones where you're having to really kind of put your best foot forward to get your offer accepted. But yes, I mean, it's, you know, it's if you have a set amount that you're doing for down payment and you're having to then go over on you know, on price, then you're having to then kind of get a little bit more flexible on your loan to be able to cover that difference, man. I mean, there's, you know, unless you got a rich, you know, rich uncle hiding somewhere, there's no other way to do it, right?
Oh, we've all got one of those. All right, so we're going to move into current real estate trends. Thanks, Chris. That was very in depth. So real estate is local, as Chris was saying. You know, if you're interested in first-time buyer programs, those type of assistant programs, Amy and I have been trained in those programs here in Texas. So reach out to us. We can get you in touch with Chris, and then he knows further about it. Once you're pre-approved and ready to go, then we go find a house for you. So
yeah.
Quick review of last week's trends. So last week's stats, remember, a healthy market is 6 months supply of inventory. So you want to remember that as we move on to the next slide, which is our current, but this was last week. So did not want to do that. All right, so for the week of 8/9/21, here in Collin County, you know, we're looking at 105.5% over list. So 5.5. Last week we were at 5.6 over list. So still going over asking, but that's dropped down a little bit. So that is a trend that's obviously, you know, that the market is moving a little bit. Days on market's the same. And something that stood out to me is that the month supply of houses even ticked down more. So even though prices went, I guess, down per se, the mark or the
supply
went down, which leads me to believe that in the coming weeks, you're going to see that listing price tick back up, most likely, because it's simple economics. Supply goes down, price goes up. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not a rocket scientist, but I do know this. So then, you know, Denton County, something we always focus on. Some of Frisco's in that, some of Frisco ISD's in there. So see a lot of similar trends there. Had another drop of 0.1% over listing. Still 5 days on market, stayed the same, and we ticked down more on the supply. So once again, I would expect in the coming weeks that our prices will remain about where they're at. And you're going to see that in all of these counties. Dallas is the same. List price ticked down a little bit. Days on market stayed the same, but the month supply ticked down at the same amount. And then Grayson County, where we talked last week, you can get you a steal. Grayson County actually ticked up 0.1 point on their list price. So even though
they heard about it, people have heard about it.
They heard.
They watched the video.
My ad's been getting out, and people are wanting to go to Grayson. So But also there, the month supply ticked down. So most likely those prices will continue to rise. I'll let Chris follow up on this, but I'd probably attribute this little slowdown to the seasonality. School's starting this week in most of these areas.
Yeah.
Uh, Generally, the market this time of year dips a little bit, but my best guess is after school gets settled in, after we're through this next little holiday weekend, um, most likely, I think the buyers' fatigue will be, I think they'll be rested and probably ready to get back out. Now, on your end, might have something to do with that on what the rates do. So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts, just real quick on that?
Yeah. I mean, but obviously everybody was somewhat back to school this week, right? So it's super evident. Any last minute summer trips, those all, people are still at this point, everything's somewhat open, right? So people are still traveling, maybe not to other countries, but at least around, around the US. So yeah, I mean, back to school is this week essentially and next week. So I think these numbers are, I mean, really speaking to the fact that people are out on vacation, right? Before school starts. So,
Yeah.
so again, I don't see, the slight drop in, again, in my opinion, the competitiveness of the market, is just because people weren't in town, right? It's not because of, um, it's not because of anything else. I mean, I firmly believe it was just, the last couple of weeks, people trying to get last minute vacations and stuff like that in before, before school starts. And then, yeah, Labor Day's coming up, so we'll be right back at it.
Listing
This
their
next,
house most likely
oh yeah,
is why our month supply ticked down a little bit. Those people come back in the market most
yep,
likely. So,
yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
last week we talked a little bit about a housing bubble. Had a brief conversation on it. I put a video out last week about the housing bubble. So, it's like 40 seconds. So I'm gonna go through it real quick, maybe. So this is reasons things are different than they were in 2008. Chris can attest during the housing bubble, your mortgage credit availability index much higher. There was an oversupply of homes on the market versus today. Banking rules have changed. And so as we've mentioned several times today, real estate's local. You can't get your real estate news locally off the TV. You need to be with professionals,
Right.
mortgage, real estate, to stay on top of it. And you just can't believe everything you hear. So when you hear those stories, reach out to Chris or I, and we probably know if it's true, false, or indifferent.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
Here's our contact information to reach out to us. Amy and I's number is 469-369-0873. Chris is at 214-734-1531. Picks the phone up just about every time you call, unless he's out in the new pool.
Yeah, I try for sure.
But anyway, you got anything to follow up with?
No, I think we covered a lot of good information, but yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest thing is just stay, if you're looking, right, if you're actively looking at this point, and stay active, stay diligent. I firmly believe that, if you're out looking, right, and you've already been qualified, you have money set aside and reserves and all those kind of things, the home that you're meant to have is out there for you. So don't get discouraged even in this type of a market. Work with, having an amazing team behind you is foremost, right? You need to do that. And yeah, keep the faith, keep on trucking.
All right, great words of wisdom. Keep the faith. Hopefully you get with a great real estate team and a great mortgage team, and hopefully that is us. If you get with us, we're going to most likely put you in contact with Chris on the mortgage side, and then we're going to work hand in hand. We've been very fortunate in this market to, our clients have had to do 2 to 3 offers, but generally in that second or third, we've been able to secure the property. So,
Yeah.
and we love doing it. I'm being the ex-coach. I love the competition. So getting in there and winning those offers just means the world. So reach out to Chris and I. Any questions, real estate, mortgage, or, if you just want to know a good life, call Chris. All right. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
All right, man. See you.